Imagine Agatha Christie is telling you the story of the last week of Jesus' life on earth. Sounds strange, right? Let's hear it. An announcement of tragedy. Jerusalem was restless, the kind of unrest that seemed to ripple beneath the surface, a subtle, silent storm waiting to break. Passover was approaching, and the city was swelling with pilgrims. Merchants shouted from their stalls. Roman soldiers marched at the edges of crowded streets. Priests exchanged guarded glances in the temple courts. And yet, beneath all this noise, there was a silence, the kind that foretells something weighty, something eternal. Then he arrived, not with an army, not with armor, but on a young donkey. No royal procession, no golden chariot, just a teacher, dressed plainly, eyes glowing with something ancient and unshakable. Yet the people hailed him like a king. They threw their cloaks and palm branches on the road before him. They cried out, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." It was more than a welcome, it was a declaration, a hope, a prophecy long awaited. But not everyone rejoiced. Behind the cheers, others watched from the shadows. The chief priests, the scribes, the elders, men of power and tradition, felt the ground shift beneath their feet. The crowd's joy was their warning. They knew something had to be done. The next day, he returned, not to receive praise, but to challenge the system itself. He entered the temple and began to overturn the tables of the money changers. Coins scattered, doves fluttered, shouts erupted. "My house shall be called a house of prayer," he declared, "but you have made it a den of thieves." It was an earthquake, not of nature, but of conviction, of confrontation. That evening, a secret meeting took place. The High Council gathered not to pray, but to plot. "He must be silenced," they said, "but not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people." And then, from the shadows, a voice spoke. Calm, quiet, cold. "What will you give me if I deliver him to you?" It was Judas, one of the 12, one of the trusted. 30 pieces of silver clinked into his palm. The days that followed were filled with tension. Jesus taught in the temple courts, confronting hypocrisy with parables sharp as blades. He wept over Jerusalem. He warned of judgment. He spoke of a kingdom not of this world. He knew what was coming, yet he pressed forward. Then came Thursday. He gathered his disciples in an upper room for what would become their last supper together. The room was dimly lit, and the air was thick with something unspoken. He took the bread, blessed it, broke it. "Take and eat," he said. "This is my body." He lifted the cup. "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for many." And then he said it, the words that silenced every heart. "One of you will betray me." Shock, disbelief. One by one, they asked, "Is it I, Lord?" Even Judas asked. And Jesus looked at him, not with anger, but with a knowing sorrow, and said, "What you are about to do, do quickly." And Judas left. Into the night. After the supper, Jesus went to a garden called Gethsemane. There, under the dark olive trees, he prayed with agony. He knelt. He sweat like drops of blood. "Father," he whispered, "if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then came the torches, the swords, the betrayer. Judas stepped forward and kissed him. "Judas," Jesus said gently, "do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" He was taken, bound, abandoned. A series of trials followed, illegal, rushed, contradictory. First before the high priest, then before Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate found no guilt in him, yet feared the mob. "I find no fault in this man," he said. But the crowd, stirred by envy and manipulation, shouted louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" So Pilate, in a gesture as hollow as it was symbolic, washed his hands. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he declared. Then came the scourging, the mockery, a crown of thorns forced upon his head. They struck him, spat on him, paraded him through the streets. At Golgotha, they nailed his hands and his feet. They lifted the cross. He hung not as a criminal, but as a sacrifice. Darkness covered the land. And then, with one final cry, he said, "It is finished." He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. The earth shook. The veil of the temple tore in two. And a Roman centurion, a soldier hardened by war, whispered in awe, "Surely this man was the Son of God." But the story did not end in death. On the third day, at dawn, the tomb was empty. The stone was rolled away. The grave could not hold him. The tragedy, long announced, carefully orchestrated, became the triumph that would turn history on its head. What man saw as defeat was heaven's greatest victory.